Welcome, everyone, to the Media Row podcast on this Tuesday morning. Yes, it comes out at 2 o'clock, but up early because I was hanging out with Ross and Owen Justice on the Rush Radio. Thankful again to Travis and Ross and all they've been able to do for me throughout this whole transition period, and still continuing to give me opportunities on their new show. Very grateful to those guys. Very grateful to the listeners, too. I know I'm still Twitter friends with a lot of people who still listen to The Rush. But still, it means the world seeing those comments and seeing how people are truly excited when I hop on with those guys, because I'm excited every time. But to see other people, it means the world, because being their producer, at times I just felt like I was pressing buttons and I didn't think I was making a lasting impact. So truly appreciate everyone and their kind words. Appreciate Travis and Ross. Be on with Ross Thursday at 7:30 again, too, to finish up the final 30 minutes with them on the rushradio.com. So make sure to check that out. But we have a lot to get to in our own show today, as I'm going to call it for the Media Row. This is a Payback Tuesday, because last night we're going to preview or recap the Kansas victory over Iowa State, Jayhawks getting payback over the Cyclones, and then the Drake Bulldogs in the lone Missouri Valley Conference game tonight. They have an opportunity to get payback on the Murray State Racers, who took them down in the Knapp Center earlier in January. So we're going to talk about Drake Murray State, preview that game, and then, of course, recap Iowa State and Kansas State, give some quick thoughts on that game. And then I have something for you listeners at the end of the show that I need you to help me out with. And I'll put out a tweet as well. That'll be a big part of helping me out for tomorrow's show, because tomorrow we're going to do something a little fun, a little interactive game. Wanted to try to do it today, but then I thought of adding something on Twitter to make it more interactive. So going to do that at the end of the show. So make sure you stick around. Do another Travis Justice deep tease. But let's just jump into it. The lone Missouri Valley Conference game of today, Drake at Murray State, 6 p.m. on ESPN2, so it's on national TV, which always love. And you have the Drake Bulldogs sitting at 20-2, 10-2 in the Missouri Valley Conference. Murray State, 11-12, 5-7 in the Missouri Valley Conference. They've dropped 3 in a row, and the worst one being the last time out, getting blown out 77-56. Versus Missouri State, who now finally is 1-10 in the Missouri Valley Conference play, and just a bad loss for the Racers. And really, this Racers team is starting to show what they did offensively in the earlier part of the season, because we're going to get into kind of how these two teams have shaped out since their first meeting. But Drake has really had the upper hand. Outside of that one loss against Murray State earlier this season, Drake is 5-1. They control these past 6 meetings, and they haven't been terribly close. Drake has really done a good job against Murray State. But let's go into the last time out these two teams played. Murray State getting the upset victory in Des Moines, 66-59. And here's just a handful of stats of how Murray State was able to do it, what Drake did wrong, and not taking anything away from Prohm and his players. They outplayed Drake. They had a great plan. They executed it. But really, they just played uncharacteristically great offensively. This is a team that is not an amazing shooting team. They're not crazy efficient. And against Drake in that first meeting, it was only the second game to that point that Murray State shot 50% or better. They out-rebounded Drake, with Drake is leading the Missouri Valley in holding opponents in rebound differential. Drake forced 15 turnovers, so the defensive aggressiveness was there, but the offense just wasn't there for the Bulldogs. Only got 16 points out of those 15 turnovers. Drake couldn't move the ball around against Murray State. Only 8 total assists. It was really sticking with only 2 guys putting up points as the bench put up 19. But of those 19, you had Isaiah Howard, the true freshman, putting up 13 of those points, which was really the game I think flipped for him and showed his confidence and athleticism. Sturtz also put up 13, but that was it for the Drake offense, truly, against Murray State. And then you had Murray State having multiple guys with double figures, including Harcum, who led with 20 points. But since that loss, we're seeing two different directions from these teams. Murray State is starting to drop. They're 3-5 in their last 8. In that time, they've only shot over 50% twice in their last 8. And they're going up against now the best defensive team in the Missouri Valley Conference in the Bulldogs that love to force turnovers, get a lot of their momentum from forcing turnovers and fast break points. Murray State in these 8 games is averaging 12 turnovers. Drake is forcing 14 turnovers in that span. Since the loss to Murray State, Drake, on the other hand, 8-0, 11-1 on the road. Drake is starting to become the efficient shooting team, shooting 50% or better in 5 of the last 6 games, 10-0 on the season when shooting 50% or better. And a big reason of why they're playing so well and shooting so efficiently is the ball's not sticking. They're averaging 12 assists. They're getting multiple people involved. It's not just relying on Sturtz to be the guy. Sure, he can put up 30 points and still be the leading scorer in most games, but you're getting more from Tavion Banks, Cam Manuel, Mitch Muscari, Isaiah Howard. You're getting more from your depth, from your role players. And then the bench, like I've said, the bench has become huge. At that time against Murray State, you were not seeing a really rhythm with substitutions from Ben McCollum. Since then, he has adjusted to what Drake needs really well. Sure, is Bennett Sturt still playing 40 minutes a game? He is, and it still makes me nervous for heading into St. Louis. But he's doing a better job of rotating guys in, and you're seeing it translate on the floor because Drake's now bench is averaging 20 points per game. And that's on top of Sturt still being aggressive early. That's on top of Mitch Muscari getting stronger and finding his shooting touch. Cam Manuel continuing to grow in confidence. Isaiah Howard being a main guy off the bench. Tavion Banks putting up career numbers in the past few games. So that's all with players just finding their role and executing it to perfection. And with Murray State allowing teams to shoot over 50%, I look at the numbers, I look at what these teams have done the past few games since their first meeting, and I know Drake is favored by 4.5, and I know Drake doesn't blow teams out. To me, I mean, I feel like Drake wins by 7, which may not sound like a lot, but to a Drake Bulldog fan, they know what I mean by that is a lot for Drake to win by. And it just feels like it may be close, early part of the second half, but I think the turnovers are going to kill Murray State. I think Drake's defense and kind of them being pissed off about how Murray State beat them earlier this year, Ben McCollum's going to have this team ready to go. They're going to go into Murray State with a purpose and a reason to get payback. And I truly believe Drake comes out with a victory in not dominant fashion, but I think they control this game. I think Murray State has potential with their starting lineup and their really strong 4 guards, one of the best backcourts in the Missouri Valley as a whole, but I think those are going to be tough to stop. Overall, I just think Drake is too strong defensively and really starting to find a rhythm and find players that fit in their role and execute their role to perfection. So I think you're seeing a different Drake team and a really different Murray State team than what we did earlier in January. And so, I mean, what the game will come down to is pretty much the same for Drake that we always talk about. One, just per usual, ball movement and get the role players involved. Drake has done a better job since that loss of moving the ball around, being aggressive early. You've heard Ben McCollum 1,000 times talk about how he's trying to get Bennett Sturts, Mitch Muscari, them to shoot the ball a little quicker. When they're open, take the shot, be aggressive early. And sometimes it takes a second for Bennett Sturts to kind of realize that, and then you see him heat up. But tonight, I think with the purpose that they're going to be playing with, that I think he'll be early or aggressive early on. Mitch Muscari has been finding a rhythm. Sure, he may not score in double figures every game, but when you have guys like Tavion Banks and Isaiah Howard, Cam Manyow even, to help out, you don't need him to score in double figures. I think you just need him to be consistent when he shoots so that he draws attention on the offensive side of the ball. And so get the ball movement going, not having the ball stick with the shot clock issues, which hasn't been a major concern really for the Drake Bulldogs. There was a few times with the shot clock the last time out at home, I think against Illinois State was the last time we kind of saw that issue of sticking, going deep into the shot clock. Control the four-guard attack. That's another key for me. You have Woods for Murray State averaging 13.5 points, Ferguson 12 points, Milton 11.6, and Harcum 11.5. And they're going to be tough to stop because they're fantastic guards. But Drake has one of the best defenses. I think they're going to force turnovers. They've forced 14 on average. Murray State averages 12 turnovers a game. I think this offense is stronger and has found a rhythm since that loss against Murray State, where I expect them to take advantage of the turnovers they gain, unlike we saw in that game in January. And then finally, just rebound. Drake has led in rebounding in 7 of their last 8 games, and that's been a huge key factor for Drake, which is really surprising because Abreu's tall, about 6'8". Manyow is about 6'8", 6'9". But they're going up against teams like you and I who have more height and size. You're going up against Bradley, who has more height than size. And Drake has just done a really good job of boxing out and really controlling the glass, which helps them control the game. Not only does their pace of play in their offensive side of things really control the pace of play, but that's a huge factor. It's just controlling that glass. And Manyow, he may not put up 12 points a game, but he is a huge factor defensively, and he's a huge factor on the glass. Cam Manyow, Isaiah Jackson being one of the leading rebounders. Bennett Sturts, another great rebounder as well. So they just need to learn from their mistakes that they had against Murray State in week 1, or in the early part of January, I should say. And that is rebounding, getting role players involved, moving the ball around the arc, not letting it just stick. And then finally, I think the biggest thing for Drake is just realizing that still, I believe this team is better than Murray State. Yes, you dropped to Murray State earlier this year, but that was just an uncharacteristic, great shooting performance by the Racers. And I think this team is going to be ready to play because we're seeing this Murray State team start to come back down to reality, 3-5 in their last 8 games. So that game at 6 o'clock on ESPN2 should be a good one. I expect Drake to win by that 6 or 7 margin. Right now, the line is at 4.5 favoring the Drake Bulldogs. And if you're able to win this one, then you're 21-2 going into another busy week where you have games on Saturday. Next week, the week following, you have a game against Bradley at home. So some really important games coming up for the Drake Bulldogs. But at this point, I know, and if you listen to The Rush this morning, we talked about how, it sucks that Drake is in a position where they could win 20-plus games and get not even allowed to be going to the NCAA tournament. But that does suck. But honestly, as a fan, if you would have told me Drake was 20-2 at this point, that's a win on the season. Let's be honest. Yes, now sitting in this position, what we know, yes, we expect more. We expect, to be honest, winning the regular season championship for the first time since 2008 and winning the third straight Missouri Valley Conference Tournament championship. Now we expect that. But overall, if you would have told me 20-2 at this point of the season, when we lost Darren DeVries, lost Tucker DeVries, lost basically all of our starters and most of our bench, only had 2 returners, one being Nate Ferguson, who actually played minutes, and Andrew Aaliyah just always was kind of dealing with injury issues. So you bring in a D2 coach, a D2 squad, and you're 20-2. That's a win. Like, glass half full, you can say I'm just trying to be positive to soften the blow of probably, if they lose in the conference tournament, of not making the NCAA tournament. You can all say that, but as a fan, it's a win on the season because of what Ben McCollum has been able to do with this team, not missing a step or a beat, and really putting Drake in a position to win their first regular season title since 2008 and try to win Drake's third straight Missouri Valley Conference championship. So, 6 o'clock tip, make sure to follow along on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Mostly Twitter is where we do the game updates, so follow at Media Row Pod on Twitter or at Justin_C Miller. Now moving on, as it is Payback Tuesday, Iowa State getting blown out on the road to Kansas, and that's not, losing at Kansas is not a thing to be ashamed of. That is a hostile environment. It is a bucket list place to go see a game, but really expected more from this team. Number 8, Iowa State just did not show up against the 16th ranked team in Kansas. Kansas 69-52 victory. And yes, Kansas really did shoot out of their mind, but Iowa State couldn't make a shot either, and they had plenty of opportunities. Kansas shot from the field 47%, 26 of 55, 50% from the three-point line, 9 of 18. And then you look at Iowa State, and it's brutal. It's bad. 19 of 62, 3 of 21. I know Milan's out, but Gilbert struggling. Lipsy played all right, but man, he hasn't been great offensively because I know he's still dealing with that hand injury, but he's never been looked upon as a guy to lead the team in scoring. And then, Nate Heisey hasn't been great, and I was actually really excited about him after watching him at UNI. Chatfield is okay, but nothing spectacular in the games I've watched. But the big thing with Kansas that impressed me was their ball movement was beautiful. Absolutely outstanding. Kansas Jayhawks, 17 team assists. Iowa State couldn't move the ball, only 6 team assists. And you just had multiple players pump fakes, just fundamental great basketball of just carving up a great defensive team like Iowa State with pump fakes, looking for good shots and passing up good shots for great shots. And the ball just swung around the arc so efficiently that a great defensive team like Iowa State just couldn't keep up. And then I'm not a huge fan of Hunter Dickinson's offensive game, like his post work. I think his footwork isn't the strongest, and he gets talked about a lot where it kind of leans me to criticize him more. But what I do love about Hunter Dickinson's game is the way he sees the floor. And now he should be able to see the floor pretty well for being whatever he is, 6'1", 7'1", or 7'2". But he sees the floor so well. Multiple plays, he would get in the post, swing it out with a bullet pass, and that would lead to those pump fakes, to those extra passes from good shots to great shots from the Jayhawks. But play of the game started with him, and that was Kansas turns over the ball. Dickinson hustles back, gets a turnover from Iowa State. And then David Coit, half-court alley-oop to KJ Adams Jr. in an unbelievable play that just brought the house down. I think that was the play that put Kansas up 20 in like the first half, late in the first half. And it reminded me of those highlights from watching Hurley and Hill with Duke, and I believe that was in 91 in the Final Four. I think they did that against Kansas as well. But just an unbelievable alley-oop. Very reminds me of that great play from Duke. But again, Cyclone fans, I know you've lost 3 straight. And I know getting blown out to a rival in Kansas is never fun. And you can hear people like me say it's not a big deal losing at Kansas. But you've lost 3 straight. You're expecting more from a top 10 team. But despite all the struggling, not even remotely close to pressing the panic button. Not even remotely close. Because you've lost 3 straight. You nearly beat Arizona, a half-court heave away from winning that game. Losing to Kansas State is the most concerning one because that one you got blown out at home, losing your 29-game winning streak. That one is concerning. Kansas, you knew Self was going to have his team ready to go, and I think Iowa State's just going through a lull. No time to panic. You're getting Milan back here soon. He's going to add great depth to this Iowa State team that needs some offensive help. Everything will be fine. This is still a team that I believe can easily go to the Elite Eight and really has a high opportunity to go to the Final Four. No time to press the panic button whatsoever for this Iowa State team. But Iowa State falls to Kansas regardless, 69-52 on the road, losing now 3 straight in the Big 12. Trust TJ. He will get this team back ready to go. So, before we wrap up today's show, I have something to ask for you listeners. And that is with Caitlin Clark. She got her jersey retired on Sunday. And I have some names written down, so I will help with this. But if you're a Drake fan, who's the next Drake Bulldog that should get their number retired? If you're an Iowa State fan, who should get their number retired? Just who is your team and whose number should get retired next on your team? I think this would be a fun conversation. Tomorrow's show will break down, of course, what happened in the Drake-Murray State game, but also kind of read off what you guys have written down in the Twitter comments for who you believe should get their number retired next. So it would be really fun. Hopefully you guys participate. Would love to hear the comments. Love these conversations. Was having it with my dad, and that's what started this idea. And so was originally just going to do Drake, but I want to broaden it and make it to your favorite team and make it any sport, basketball, baseball, football, any of that. Who should be on your favorite team? Who should get their number retired next? So we'll break down that tomorrow as well. But again, thank you to Travis and Ross for having me on this morning on the Rush Radio. You can hear me at 7:30 with them on Thursday. Thank you to DKG Images, again, for letting us use his images that he takes at the Drake games. We'll use those throughout the season, so always going to thank him. And always, always appreciate you listeners and everyone listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio app, YouTube, all that stuff means the world. Can't believe I get to do this, and really appreciate you guys always sticking with us here at Media Row. So thank you to the listeners. Be sure to check us out tomorrow at 2 o'clock where we'll recap Drake-Murray State and talk about some jersey retirements. Next on the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller, tomorrow at 2 o'clock.